It was never a beef. It's only a difference in opinion. That's like me being mad at my little brother because he getting cash now. I'm not mad at that. I'm just mad at my little brother when he don't respect me. Now, when you don't respect me, I'm gonna spank I don't how rich you got on the block. I'm your big brother. I will break your big down.
In the glamorous universe of hip-hop, two icons shine more brightly than the rest: Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G. Their roller coaster journey from close friends to fierce rivals was a story for the books. Tupac, the voice of the West Coast, and Biggie, the kingpin of the East, turned their beef into a full-blown symbol of the massive rivalry between two hip-hop giants. This clash wasn't just about who had the better beats or lyrics. It escalated into personal battles that, of course, resulted in bloodshed. What kicked off as a simple East Coast versus West Coast rivalry blew up into something way bigger than just a battle of beats and bars. Tupac and Biggie weren't just duking it out for chart toppers or shiny awards. They became the faces of this epic coast-to-coast showdown. These two were tight once, friends who genuinely respected each other's game, but the pressure cooker of the music biz, the media's relentless hype, and that all-consuming hunger to be number one tore them apart. You know how they say, there can only be one winner. Tupac and Biggie knew only one of them could rule the hip-hop world. So, why did Tupac find himself genuinely afraid of the Notorious B.I.G? It wasn't just the rivalry itself, but the personal stakes involved. The fear wasn't just about competition, but about what it meant in the high-stakes world they were navigating. As the rivalry heated up, the stakes got higher, and the pressures mounted. Dive into the story, and you'll see why this feud was more than just headlines, because Tupac had found out pretty early on that his beef with Biggie could end with one of them 6 feet under the ground. The rise of Tupac Shakur. In the lively streets of Harlem, a young Lassane Parrish, who the world would soon know as Tupac Shakur, was just beginning to write his legendary story. Growing up with a single mom, Tupac's childhood was a roller coaster, constantly moving from one neighborhood to the next, always trying to dodge the trouble that seemed to follow them everywhere. And as if that wasn't tough enough, his mom's struggle with addiction made life even harder. They were living on the edge, facing new challenges daily. But even in the midst of all that chaos, Tupac's raw talent and resilience started to shine through, setting the stage for the greatness that was to come. Those early experiences in Harlem, full of hustle and hardship, became the fuel for his passionate, groundbreaking artistry. It was right there, in those gritty streets, that the journey of one of hip-hop's biggest icons began.
It was hard because, she was my hero.
Tupac's journey was like a wild ride from the bustling streets of Baltimore to the laid-back vibes of Marin City, California. Each move wasn't just about changing scenery, it was like hitting the reset button on his life. When he got to Marin City, right in the middle of all that street hustle, he stumbled upon his true passion, poetry. And let me tell you, those soulful lines weren't just random scribbles. They were his golden ticket to something way bigger. Ever thought about how he juggled both acting and rapping? Tupac did too. He once shared how these two worlds blended together, shaping his whole career. His poetry was the secret sauce behind those powerful lyrics, turning his raw, real-life experiences into the music that made him a legend.
So I went out there broke. I wasn't even thinking about acting. I was just thinking about surviving. But such is life. I ended up doing it, what I loved the most. I ended up doing both of those things.
By the time 1991 rolled around, Tupac Shakur was no longer just another face in the crowd. He was the one owning the stage and rocking the mic. His journey began as a roadie and backup dancer for the legendary hip-hop crew Digital Underground, where he was hustling hard behind the scenes. But Tupac wasn't content with just being part of the entourage. He was on a mission to make his mark. That year, he burst onto the scene with his groundbreaking album, Tupacalypse Now. This wasn't just any album. It was his big, loud shout-out to the world that he had arrived and was ready to take over. With its powerful tracks and raw energy, Tupacalypse Now announced Tupac as a force to be reckoned with, setting the stage for his rise to hip-hop stardom. The rise of the Notorious B.I.G. Meanwhile, over in the gritty streets of Brooklyn, New York, another legend was gearing up to seize his moment in the spotlight. Christopher Wallace, later known to the world as Biggie, was living a double life that seemed straight out of a movie script. By day, he was hitting the books at some of Brooklyn's most renowned high schools, where he was a whiz in English and a standout student. By night, he was maneuvering through the shady corners of the street, hustling and grinding to make ends meet. It was like he was leading a dual life, balancing the academic world with the street hustle. Little did anyone know, this combination of brains and street smarts would set the stage for Biggie to become one of the most iconic figures in hip-hop history. His story was just beginning, and the streets of Brooklyn were about to witness the rise of a new legend.
And just being in a situation where my mom's working, going to school, just leaving me open to dip and dab into different things, you know what I'm saying? It just left me kind of stuck. My mentality was more on some getting paper, not caring about nothing else.
Biggie's life was a wild mix of contrasts, but it was in the world of rap that he discovered his real passion. The beginning of Tupac and Biggie friendship. Back in the early 90s, Biggie Smalls was like a rookie in the rap game, just starting to make some noise. By sheer luck, he dropped a demo tape that ended up in the hands of Source magazine, and bam, his raw, undeniable talent got him thrust into the spotlight. It was like a dream come true for the fresh-faced rapper. Then came Sean Diddy Combs, who was still going by the nickname Puffy Daddy back then. He was vibing to Biggie's tracks and couldn't ignore the rising star. By 1993, Biggie had dropped his first single, Party and making a bold entrance into the hip-hop world. Meanwhile, Tupac Shakur was already on a platinum streak, dominating the charts and making headlines. Eager to connect with the iconic rapper, Biggie pulled some strings and enlisted a to arrange a meetup at a party in Los Angeles. That night, amidst the party lights and music, the foundation for their legendary friendship was laid. In a podcast, Snoop Dogg also recalled the early relation between Tupac and Biggie.
We all chilling.
Right.
We on the West Coast. Tupac brought Biggie with him. We rocking. We let Cug get down with us. We go in the back, smoke, chill, hang out. It's beautiful.
Recalling the early days of Tupac's and Biggie's relationship, D-Dot spilled the beans in an interview, giving fans a peek into the camaraderie and chemistry between the two rappers. Their first meeting was the beginning of a friendship that would become one of the most talked about partnerships in hip-hop history. Little did they know, their bond would be a key chapter in the epic saga of 90s rap.
You know, it was an industry relationship that was growing into a more outside the industry relationship. But, you know, obviously Pac was on different places. You know, Big was just trying to get his thing up. So, and it was probably more like a, you know, I would say teacher-student, you know, because Pac was very experienced. He was already considered, you know, legendary at the time, and Big was just coming up.
Early in their careers, Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls weren't just two big names in the rap game. They were genuinely tight, with a real mutual respect for each other. Their friendship wasn't just a bunch of hype. It showed in the little things. Like that time Tupac handed Biggie a bottle of Hennessy, a cool gesture that symbolized their growing camaraderie. When these two legends joined forces, it was pure magic. Take the 1993 Weiser Superfest at Madison Square Garden in New York City, for example. When Tupac and Biggie hit the stage for a freestyle session, the crowd went absolutely bananas. Their on-stage chemistry was off the charts, and you could feel the electricity in the air. Things took an interesting turn when Biggie asked Tupac for some career management advice. Instead of just giving him the usual pointers, Tupac came up with something totally unexpected.
Nah, stay with Puff. He will make you a star.
This wasn't just any old piece of advice. It was Tupac's way of showing he truly cared about Biggie and believed in his talent. It was a prime example of their friendship, built on respect and support, way beyond the usual rap rivalry. Turning point of the relationship between Tupac and Biggie. Even the closest friendships can hit some serious bumps, and Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls were no exception. Their relationship had its share of highs and lows, but things really took a nosedive on November 30th, 1994. Picture this. After a few drinks, Tupac and his three buddies, definitely not bodyguards, just his crew, rolled up to Quad Recording Studios in Times Square. What was supposed to be a simple studio session quickly spiraled into chaos when they crossed paths with three guys decked out in army fatigues. Guess where these guys were from? Brooklyn, the same hood as Biggie. Things seemed to be cooling down when Tupac heard Lil Cease, one of Biggie's crew members, shouting from upstairs, hinting that Biggie and Puffy might be around. But just as Tupac started to relax, everything went sideways. As he and his crew headed for the elevator, the guys in fatigues whipped out their guns and told them to hit the floor. Suddenly, Tupac, who was reaching for his own piece, found himself in the crossfire. Bullets started flying, turning what should have been a routine visit into a scene straight out of an action movie. Tupac was left battered, bruised, and with his jewelry swiped right off him. He played dead, hoping his attackers would think he was done for and move on. In a display of sheer grit, he somehow managed to drag himself to the elevator. When he finally reached the studio level, he stumbled upon Puffy, Biggie, and their entourage, their faces a mix of shock and maybe even a hint of guilt. Puffy would later claim they were just concerned about Tupac. But Tupac wasn't buying that story for a second. He suspected their shock was more about their anger toward him. Spice One, a buddy of Tupac's back then, remembered Tupac's take on the whole messy situation. Tupac thought that their reaction was more about their own discomfort and guilt than genuine concern. He was convinced they were seething beneath the surface, their shock a thin veil over their true feelings. For Tupac, this was just another twist in the drama-filled saga of his life, proving once again that in the world of rap, things could get seriously complicated and personal.
Because, it set me up and y'all could have told me them was downstairs and all of that,
This incident set off a whirlwind of doubt and speculation about what really went down that night. It wasn't just another street brawl, it sparked a full-blown storm of controversy. Tupac claimed he was shot 5 times with bullets hitting everything from his head to, incredibly, his scrotum. The sheer drama of it all seemed straight out of a movie script. In a 2005 interview with Vibe, Henchman dropped a bombshell, suggesting that the attack was less about a simple and more about sending a powerful message, a brutal reminder of the weight of Tupac's words. As the chaos unfolded, Biggie and Puffy were quick to put up a defensive shield, vehemently denying any involvement or even any knowledge of the attack. They acted like they were just innocent bystanders in this high-stakes drama, distancing themselves from the mess. Tupac going through legal issues. The day after the Quad Studios incident on December 1st, 1994, slapped Tupac Shakur with a brutal dose of reality. Imagine Tupac, wrapped in bandages and confined to a wheelchair, rolling into a New York courtroom for the Ayanna Jackson case. He faced a harsh verdict, guilty, though he managed to dodge the sodomy and weapon charges. The judge handed down a minimum sentence of 1.5 years in prison and slapped him with a jaw-dropping $3 million bail for appeal. With his finances in shambles, Tupac couldn't post bail, so he was shipped off to Clinton Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison way upstate in New York. Just as his world seemed to crumble, his third album, Me Against the World, hit the streets. It was a rough period where Tupac even toyed with the idea of quitting music altogether, utterly overwhelmed by the unending chaos that seemed to chase him everywhere. But then, a fresh and troubling rumor sparked a new fire in him. Tupac caught wind from some pretty reliable sources that Biggie might have had advanced knowledge of the Quad Studios shooting. This bombshell hit Tupac hard. He was stunned by the thought that Biggie, someone he'd once supported, could just sit back or not investigate an attack that unfolded so close to home. The betrayal stung deeply, leaving Tupac grappling with a mix of anger and disbelief. It wasn't just about the shooting anymore. It was about trust and loyalty in a world that seemed increasingly hostile. Tupac later spilled his feelings about the betrayal.
You don't know who shot me in your hometown? These guys from your neighborhood?
Things took a nosedive when Tupac, locked up and low on cash, found himself turning to none other than Suge Knight, the notorious head of Death Row Records. With his legal bills piling up and his mom's house about to be foreclosed, Tupac was in a tough spot. Suge didn't waste any time. He quickly wired $15,000 to Tupac's prison account, giving him a huge sigh of relief. Grateful, Tupac invited Suge to visit him in Dannemora, New York. But these visits weren't just friendly catch-ups. They were part of a bigger plan. Death Row's lawyer, David Kenner, was already working hard to get Tupac out on an appeal bond. For Tupac, Suge's offer was way more than just a record deal. It was a golden ticket into the wildest and most influential scene in hip-hop. Suge's influential role. Things took a wild turn at the Source Awards when Suge Knight, with his trademark larger-than-life presence, stole the show. He swaggered up to accept the award for Above the Rim, the soundtrack closely linked to Death Row Records, and made sure everyone knew it. But Suge wasn't done yet. He unleashed a verbal bombshell that reverberated through the music world. With a smirk, he took aim at Sean Puffy Combs, the mastermind behind Bad Boy Records and Biggie's mentor. Suge didn't mince words. He called out Diddy in front of everyone and invited artists to come over to Death Row. It was like watching a wrestling promo in real life. Suge's dramatic move was fueled by a recent prison visit with Tupac. During their chat, Tupac had spilled the beans about his plans to join Death Row and his deep-seated grudge against Biggie. Reggie Knight Jr. later spilled the tea on what Tupac had said, revealing just how charged and personal things had become.
I need you to ride with me because I'm going to destroy Bad Boy Records. I believe they had something to do with me getting shot.
Suge, throwing his full support behind Tupac, vowed that Death Row would stand firm against Tupac's foes. Biggie dropping a diss track and Tupac's response. Amid the rising storm of tension, Biggie dropped Who Shot Ya in February 1995, and it instantly became one of those tracks that oozed dark brilliance. The song didn't name Tupac directly, but given that it was released right after the infamous Quad Studios shooting, many, including Tupac himself, took it as a not-so-subtle. With its gritty lyrics and unapologetic delivery, the track quickly solidified Biggie's throne in the East Coast rap kingdom. Jay-Z later chimed in, noting how the song's impact on hip-hop was seismic, but for Tupac, it felt like a personal slap in the face, like Biggie had thrown a musical punch that landed squarely where it hurt the most. It only fueled Tupac's growing fears and suspicions toward Biggie, adding more fuel to an already blazing fire. The track's release not only stirred the pot, but also amplified the animosity, making the East Coast-West Coast feud even more intense and dramatic. It was as if Biggie was speaking directly to Tupac, turning the heat up on an already sizzling rivalry. Things took a serious nosedive for Tupac when he found himself behind bars, broke, and facing a mountain of legal fees. With his mom's house on the brink of foreclosure and his cash reserves dwindling, Tupac was in a tight spot. Enter Suge Knight, the infamous head honcho of Death Row Records, who swooped in to save the day. Suge didn't just sit around. He wired $15,000 straight into Tupac's prison account, and suddenly, Tupac could breathe a little easier. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Tupac extended an invite for Suge to visit him in Dannemora, New York. But these weren't just casual catch-up sessions. They were part of a master plan. Death Row's lawyer, David Kenner, was already hustling to get Tupac out on appeal bond, working tirelessly to secure his release. For Tupac, Suge's offer wasn't merely a record deal. It was like finding a golden ticket to the wildest, most powerful party in the hip-hop world. It was a chance to leap from the clutches of legal troubles straight into the heart of an influential empire. The stakes were high, and Suge's intervention was the key to a whole new chapter in Tupac's tumultuous life and career. Tupac's downfall. Tupac's final act played out on what started as a pretty typical Las Vegas night. Picture this: Tupac riding shotgun in a sleek black BMW, with Death Row's own Suge Knight behind the wheel, cruising back from a high-energy Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand. The plan was simple: hit up a lively nightclub and cap off the night with some fun. But, as we all know, the universe loves to throw a wrench in things. As they stopped at a red light near the glitzy lights of the Las Vegas Strip, a white Cadillac pulled up next to them. Out of nowhere, the air was filled with the crackle of gunfire, turning what should have been a night of celebration into a scene of chaos. Tupac was hit multiple times, with bullets ripping into his chest, while Suge Knight, surprisingly, only took a few minor scratches. Tupac was quickly rushed to the hospital, where he fought bravely for 6 grueling days. Despite all efforts, his battle was in vain. On September 13th, the world lost one of its most influential voices when Tupac Shakur passed away due to respiratory failure and cardiac arrest, following the removal of his right lung. The investigation into Tupac's was like navigating a never-ending maze with no way out. It hit a dead end for a while, leaving everyone scratching their heads. But then, in 2002, the Los Angeles Times stirred things up with a new twist. They suggested that the Southside Crips might have been behind the shooting as payback for an earlier scuffle with Tupac. The spotlight then shifted to Orlando Anderson, a known Crip who had had a run-in with Tupac earlier that fateful day. Anderson quickly became the prime suspect. However, things took a dramatic turn when Anderson was in a separate gang-related incident, which threw a wrench in the investigation. He was never formally charged, leaving many questions unanswered. Fast forward to early 2018, and retired Las Vegas police detective Clifford Mogg, who had been pulled into the case, gave some intriguing testimony to a grand jury. He revealed some behind-the-scenes details, adding yet another layer to this tangled web of mystery. The saga of Tupac's remains as elusive and captivating as ever. We were never able to identify the person who rented the car, where it was rented from, and then when it comes to the gun, we have never recovered, as of this date, the weapon that was used in Tupac's accusations against Biggie and Puffy for the 1994 Quad Studios shooting were like throwing gasoline on a bonfire in the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. Tupac and Biggie were already at the center of this epic rap beef, and things got even crazier after Tupac made it clear he blamed Biggie and Puffy for the New York shooting. Talk about adding fuel to the fire. Tupac's bold claims only cranked up the drama and rivalry to a whole new level. It was like watching a high-stakes game of musical chairs, where everyone was just waiting for the next big blow-up. With tensions running high and both coasts locked in a bitter feud, the whole scene was caught in a whirlwind of accusations, counterclaims, and relentless media buzz. In 2018, the plot thickened dramatically when Suge Knight dropped a major hint that he might have been the actual target that night in Las Vegas. This revelation added a whole new layer of intrigue to an already convoluted story. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more tangled, a 2011 report surfaced that took the drama to another level. The report revealed that the FBI had been investigating the Jewish Defense League, a controversial organization, for allegedly extorting protection money from Tupac Shakur and other prominent rappers. This revelation introduced yet another twist to the tale, suggesting that the situation was far more complex than anyone had previously imagined. The idea that the Jewish Defense League might have been involved in this shady business added a new dimension of mystery to the case, leading to more questions and speculations. Just like that, the two greatest rappers of their time ended up in tragedy because of their obsession to be the best. That's it for today. We'll be back for more. If you enjoyed this video, click the link on your screen to watch similar ones.